Coming up today, calling it a step in the right direction, the United States welcomes Korea and Japan's efforts to improve their strained relations on the 50th anniversary of normalizing their diplomatic ties. In a clear indication more people are tucking their money away for a rainy day, Korea's savings rate hits a 17-year high in the first 3 months of the year. Plus, Korea reports 3 new cases of the MERS virus, but no additional deaths. Officials say the outbreak is slowing, with the number of people in quarantine tumbling by the day. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Tuesday, the 23rd of June. You're tuned into our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. We start with the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome or MERS outbreak in Korea, and measures are being discussed in order to prevent such occasions like this occurring in the future. For details, let's go straight to our Kim Ji-yeon, who joins us at the news centre. Ji-yeon, what's the latest?
Well, Mark, 3 more cases were confirmed earlier today, with the tally now at 175. And you mentioned that this week seemed to have turned a point in this outbreak, with a fewer number of confirmed cases and deaths reported as the days progress. Meanwhile, the number of people recovering from MERS is rising. Super spreader patient 14 recovered from the MERS virus today, and with this, the number of people who have recovered from MERS and have been discharged from the hospital stands at 54. Almost double the number of MERS deaths. And more good news, confirmed patient 109 gave birth earlier this morning to a healthy baby boy. The health ministry says both the patient and the baby are currently in stable condition. And this, in the medical realm, it's seen as almost impossible for a pregnant person to be confirmed with MERS, let alone give birth to a healthy child in that condition. And now the country seems to be shifting its focus from learning lessons to preventing similar cases from occurring in the future. Mark.
And Ji-yeon, one of the main criticisms was how health authorities dealt with the outbreak in its initial stages, which is critical in containing a spread like this. Now, if appropriate measures were taken, this is what the critics are saying, the virus may not have spread to other regions, including the Samsung Medical Center in southern Seoul. This is considered the epicenter of the virus.
Well, just an hour ago, the country's largest conglomerate, Samsung Group, made a public apology and vowed to take necessary steps to prevent such cases from occurring in the future. Take a look.
I'm deeply sorry to those that have been affected by this outbreak, particularly to the MERS victims and their families. I promise to fully support measures to prevent such cases in the future, including the improvement of the hospital and ER environment and more support for the development of vaccines for infectious diseases.
The hospital has also been criticized for lack of protective equipment for medical workers that may have contributed to the virus's spread. Currently, more than 2,000 people are placed in quarantine or isolated from their homes, while more than 1,000 have been released overnight. Back to you, Mark.
Now, the MERS outbreak continues to dominate the parliamentary interpellation session, now into its 3rd and penultimate day at the National Assembly. Coming under a barrage of criticism this morning, Health Minister Moon Hyung-pyo apologized for the government's failure to swiftly deal with the outbreak in the initial stages. He said the government was not up to speed on the virus at first, adding that in the early stages, the government merely followed actions outlined in a simple manual distributed by the World Health Organization. The health minister said officials were now taking a variety of measures to prevent the further spread of the virus, including shutting down entire hospital wards if necessary. The US government has thrown its moral support behind Korea and Japan's efforts to improve their bilateral relations. This after the leaders of both countries attended ceremonies at each other's embassies on Monday to mark the 50th anniversary of normalized relations. Some experts think the apparent thaw could signal a new chapter in bilateral relations, but others aren't so sure. Connie Kim reports.
Washington welcomed a possible indication of improving Korea-Japan ties. Korean President Park Geun-hye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe Both expressed hope for better relations at separate ceremonies marking the 50th anniversary of normalization of diplomatic ties, hosted by each other's embassies on Monday. The U.S. State Department spokesperson said on the same day that Washington welcomes Seoul and Tokyo's agreement to participate in the events and their efforts to boost bilateral relations. The view was echoed by many American experts. Previous U.S. spokesman for the U.S. State Department, Alan Romberg, said the two leaders are heading towards mending frayed relations. Japan's refusal to apologize for its sexual enslavement of thousands of Korean women during World War II has been one of the most contentious issues between the two countries. Former National Foreign Policy Advisor Victor Cha said President Park and Prime Minister Abe's visit to each other's embassies indicated the possibility for a Korea-Japan summit should trilateral summit talks among Korea, China, and Japan take place in Seoul this year. However, experts say historical issues must be addressed in order for Seoul-Tokyo relations to improve. Dennis Halpin of Johns Hopkins University cited that Abe has taken a bolder stance regarding its past sexual enslavement issues after returning from his Washington trip in April, and that Abe could visit the highly controversial Yasukuni War Shrine that honors several Class A criminals. Analysts say whether or not Abe apologizes for Japan's wartime atrocities in his August statement, marking the end of the 70th anniversary of World War II, could affect the future of bilateral relations. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se says any resolution to resolve the wartime sex slavery issue should be primarily based on what the victims want. Speaking in an interview with Japanese public broadcaster NHK on Monday, Yoon said that if they come up with a solution the women are satisfied with, the issue will be dealt with and the victims will have closure. He stressed the importance of restoring dignity to the 50 registered Korean survivors before they pass away. Minister Yoon said that by doing so, the two countries can open a new chapter in their relations. Assessing the meeting with his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida during his visit to Tokyo earlier this week, Yoon said the two sides were able to reach agreement on some pending issues. Japan is considering specifying the historical background of its wartime industrial facilities that it's pushing to have registered on UNESCO's World Heritage List. Citing a number of sources, Tokyo-based Kyodo News reported on Monday that the Shinzo Abe administration is working on details to create an information brochure for visitors. It would include the history of some of its sites where tens of thousands of Koreans were forced to work as slave laborers during the colonial era. The report said the move reflects the Japanese government's decision to adhere to an agreement reached during a meeting between the foreign ministers of Korea and Japan this week. Tokyo will soon inform the World Heritage Committee on the latest compromise with Korea in order to push ahead with its previous bid to put 23 Meiji industrial sites on the UNESCO list. The United Nations will open a field office in Seoul later today to deal with the human rights abuses taking place in North Korea. The Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights will work on monitoring and documenting human rights in North Korea, as described in a report released by the UN Commission of Inquiry earlier this year. The office is also expected to serve as a bridge for domestic civic groups working to address human rights in the North and the international community. The opening is sure to worsen relations between the two Koreas. North Korea has strongly opposed this office, calling it, quote, an unpardonable provocation and an open declaration of war against it. The opening ceremony of the office will be hosted by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, who arrives in Seoul on Tuesday for a 3-day stay. Now, in economic news, Korea recorded its highest savings rate in almost 2 decades in the first quarter of this year, as households in Korea kept a tight rein on their spending in these unpredictable economic times. Shin Se-min reports.
With the domestic economy still indicating an unstable economic climate, more Koreans are opting to save their money rather than spending it. Official data from the government and the central bank shows that Korea's total savings rate reached its highest in 17 years in the first quarter of this year, up 1.5 percentage points from the same period last year. The total savings rate includes all household, corporate, and government saving numbers. The rate has been picking up pace in the recent years after plunging to 31% in 2002. Looking into the savings, the rate of private savings got a boost, while that of the government has declined for the past 3 consecutive years. Last year, the private savings rate outstripped the government savings for the first time since 1999. Analysts attribute the increase in the savings rate to consumers' reluctance to spend and low increase in income. Korea's logged 3.3% economic growth last year, but expectations for this year have been falling, with the current forecast in the low 3% range. And with the country's aging population, people are choosing to save up for their future. Experts say increased savings may be a good sign in the long run, but it's not the right fit for the current economy.
Saving disposable income allows for spending in the future. But the domestic economy, with such uncertainties, needs more consumers and corporations to spend and circulate the economic flow.
He added that assuring consumers that the economy will become more stable is the key for increasing consumer spending. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's technological advancement in future growth engines lags roughly 4 years behind the United States. Korea's Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning says that in the 13 industries identified last year as leading sectors for the future, Korea reached only 79% of America's development levels in terms of core technology. The fields include 5G mobile communication, smart cars, and intelligent robots. Korea is pushing to accelerate progress in 5G as it plans to unveil the world's first preliminary fifth-generation network during the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. Millions of people from around the world have been flocking to the Italian city of Milan for this year's World Expo. The Korean pavilion has been popular since the expo started last month, and this week, Korean officials are putting even greater effort into raising awareness about everything Korea has to offer. And Na Hyung-kyung files this report from Milan.
Korea's traditional tune resonates throughout the Sempione Park in central Milan. A night before Korea Day at this year's World Expo, a diverse set of performances took place in front of the symbolic Arch of Peace. This plaza is about 12 kilometers away from the actual expo venue, but it's the perfect place to attract and please the eyes and ears of the locals.
I didn't know about pansori, but I found it similar to Italian vocal music. I also realized Korea's b-boying style is different from what we see here. It was amazing.
I knew a little bit about Korea, but tonight I got to know many new things, including Korea's sports, music and food. It was energetic, passionate, and the part with the instruments was touching.
The vivid colors of Korea's traditional costume hanbok mesmerized the crowds, while a K-pop b-boying crew immersed visitors in Korean culture. Some might question why cultural performances when the expo theme is food, but there's a reason.
We wanted to show them not only the dynamic side of Korea, but the traditionally beautiful aspect of the country as well. Combining these types of cultural performances is more effective, especially because Korean food, or hanshik, originates from tradition.
It's a chance for those not yet familiar with Korea to get to know the country better and explore many different dimensions of Korea's deep-rooted culture.
On the following day, an official ceremony for the National Day of Korea will take place at the Expo, where around 200 officials from Korea and Italy will gather to highlight Korea's creativity and innovation in the global food sector. Na Hyung-kyung, Arirang News, Milan.
US President Barack Obama has waded into the debate about race in America in the most spectacular way by using a word most politicians would never utter. Speaking in an interview for Mark Broom's WTF podcast, which was released on Monday, Obama used the N-word. He said progress on race was not just a matter of it not being polite to say the N-word in public. Obama added that while attitudes about race had improved since he was born, the legacy of slavery was still part of America's DNA. Now, reacting to the media frenzy that followed, White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest said Obama hadn't planned on using the word, but stressed he didn't regret using it either. The interview was recorded a couple of days after 9 people were murdered in a mass shooting at an African-American church in South Carolina. Now, it has emerged that US and British intelligence spied on foreign antivirus software companies, including 2 from Korea, as they sought to enhance their offensive surveillance techniques. Citing fresh documents leaked by NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden more than 2 years ago, US-based online news site The Intercept reported Monday that the US National Security Agency and Britain's GCHQ spent years reverse engineering computer security software made by at least 23 antivirus firms around the globe, including 2 from Korea, Anlab and Haudi. Now, according to the documents, the spy agencies monitored email traffic to obtain information on software vulnerability or malware reports. Well, those are stories we have been following on this Tuesday afternoon in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out our website, arirang.co.kr/news. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.